We're working to connect a region of over 600 new bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's program.
Katulad ng transport. So ito yung
Philippine Statistics Authority reported that inflation unexpectedly eased in February.
8.6% inflation.
At least 15 people are killed and dozens fared missing after torrential rains and landslides battered one of Indonesia's outermost islands bordering the South China Sea. President Marcos said the killing of Negros Oriental Governor Roel Digamo has no place in the society and is entirely unacceptable. Thousands of Rohingya refugees were left homeless once again after a huge fire broke out in the world's largest refugee camp in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar. Philippine Statistics Authority reported that inflation unexpectedly eased in February. Inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index quickened to 8.6% year-on-year last month. Now, this was lower than the 8.7 print recorded in January, just a tad lower compared to the preceding month. National statistician Dennis Mapa attributed the softer headline price growth to easing transport inflation. Take a look.
Katulad ng transport. So ito yung top 4 na mga commodity items, commodity groups na nag-contribute dito sa 8.6% inflation. You have food na 3.9 percentage point, housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na 1.8 percentage point, transport 0.8 percentage point, at restaurant and accommodation services na 0.8 percentage point. Then isang bumaba talaga yung transport. Siya yung main contributory dahil dito sa pagbaba ng inflation sa February versus January. Una dahil nung February, kung naalala nyo, nung February 2022 ay ito yung simula ng pagtaas ng presyo ng gasoline saka diesel. So in a way, mayroon tayong parang tinatawag dito na base effect. Sa March, titingnan natin ang isang malaking contributory, again, yung transport. May announcement tayo na magtaas ng presyo ng gasoline diesel ngayong linggo. So the PSA data collector sa ating mga field offices ay itatrack ito. Pero nakita rin natin na yung core inflation medyo mataas compared sa January. So may mga items na medyo sticky, continuous yung pagtaas niya. Restaurant and accommodation services for one. But transport for the month of February seems to be the major contributor.
However, food inflation sustained its ascent to 10.8% year-on-year last month. Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno foresees food importation as a way to increase supply and targeted assistance to the most affected sectors to keep the food prices within reach. Diokno also noted that the government wanted to increase the country's agricultural output. Let's listen in.
With the press, no? Unang-una, binanggit namin yung anong sources ng inflation. Ang lumalabas ay talagang food items, no? So major items like vegetables, meat, sugar, fish, no? And then so in relation to that, I reported kung gaano karami tayong kailangang angkatin na mga na rice, yellow corn, raw and refined sugar, pork and fish. And then I emphasized that in order to tackle inflation, talaga all of government approach, no? So ang BSP naman ginagawa na yung kanyang role. In fact, ang BSP natin ay one of the most aggressive in this part of the world, no? In terms of adjusting the policy rate. Second sa aggressiveness is Korea. But otherwise, tayo yung pinaka-aggressive, no? I remember when I left BSP, ang interest rate natin is 2%. Ngayon, nasa 6% na tayo. Ang adjustment niya is 400 basis points. Kasi yung 100 basis point is equivalent to 1%. Kailangan tayo magkangkat ng fertilizers sa mga ibang bansa kasi kailangan natin yan for agricultural production. So we have, right now, we can import from Saudi Arabia and China. We have to focus on agriculture production and productivity. And then marami namang programa tayo sa budget na nakatutok dito sa agricultural production. Yep. So, for example, removal of the Certificate of Necessity to Import, or CNI, for fish. Tapos, digitalize and centralize the sanitary and phytosanitary import clearance system. Kasi I understand, ito yung sanitary and phytosanitary import clearance. Dati computerized to ng panahon ni GMA, tapos ng panahon ni Pinoy, kinuwang manual. So nakabagal, no? So ngayon, we will computerize it again, no? And then, tinatawag namin yung implement the equivalence principle of the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement. Ano ibig sabihin nito? Ito parang sa vaccine nangyari sa vaccine. Sabi sa US, okay na sa FDA nila, di ba? Sabi okay na itong klase ng vaccine na ito. Pagdating dito sa atin, ini-examine natin ulit, di ba? Dumadaan ulit sa FDA. Okay na nga sa US yung Pfizer, mga Moderna. Gano'n. So ngayon, ang sinasabi namin na equivalence, pag in-okay na yun sa ibang bansa at reliable naman yung approval, huwag na natin ulitin, di ba? Para mabilis ang pag-release. So that's one. And then remove the required authority to release imported goods, or ATRIG. Yun. Ito naman, BIR Customs. So,
meanwhile, President Marcos recognized the role corporations play in boosting the country's micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MISMES, or MSMEs, as well as uplifting the lives of Filipino farmers. Let's listen in.
We know very well how MSMEs are crucial in the creation of new ideas, of jobs and wealth in the country. So it is only right that we recognize the power and the influence that this sector holds. We also recognize the role of big corporations in inviting MSMEs, spurring their growth and realizing their potential. I have always said that in the difficulties that we are facing ahead, there is no sector of society that can manage the recovery by itself. And it cannot be done unless the different sectors of society are working together and trying to implement a plan with a common understanding of what is needed to be done, with a common understanding of what people need, without forgetting every part of that sector or that area of the economy. And in the end, this is really what it's all about. It is about a decent living for our farmers, so that our farmers can live by virtue of their hard work. That they can, besides just surviving, that they can hold out hope within themselves. That soon, one day, we can do more.
MSMEs comprise basically 62% of job generation. That's huge. And if we can grow these MSMEs, then the economies of these respective provinces will also grow, and that will all reflect moving upward to the entire Philippines, and the Philippines will continue to grow. So we all need to scale up our MSMEs.
Tabangat gobyerno, mono nga, sab no, yan, nakaganap banar. Yatin, kanatiban ka na pag umakay kami, mga yan sali-sali ko muna taot bato doon, kapubukidan, ako asong kunat kapatagan.
Officials from the Department of Agriculture, Department of the Interior and Local Government, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the Department of Trade and Industry with heads of Go Negosyo, the National Tobacco Authority, Philippine Coconut Authority, National Irrigation Administration, and National Commission on Indigenous Peoples also took part in the ceremonial signing of the MOA. At least 15 people were killed, dozens feared missing after torrential rains and landslides battered one of Indonesia's outermost islands, bordering the South China Sea. Take a look. Now, pictures provided by the National Disaster Mitigation Agency showed mud and debris from the landslides had inundated houses near a cliff on the remote Serasan Island. Bits of metal torn off roofs and fallen trees were also visible. The remoteness of the village where the landslide struck in the Natuna region of Riau province, combined with poor weather and downed communication lines, complicated rescue efforts according to officials. Riau Islands Disaster Mitigation Agency spokesperson Junaina added that with the communication network in the affected area between Borneo Island and peninsular Malaysia cut off, it was hard to get the latest information. Indonesia is prone to landslides during the rainy season, aggravated in some places by deforestation, and prolonged torrential rain has caused flooding in different areas of the archipelago nation. Experts say the country's weather-related disasters are likely being made worse by climate change. President Marcos said the killing of Negros Oriental Governor Roel Degamo has no place in the society and is entirely unacceptable. He ordered authorities to tag political violence hotspots and launch a nationwide campaign against illegal firearms and private armies following the series of high-profile killings of politicians.
Governor Roel was pronounced dead at 11:41 today. And sa national government, Governor Degamo do not deserve that kind of death.
Actually, ang sinabi ko sa ating Secretary Abalos and the PNP is to now make an examination, kagaya yung ating ginagawa kapag darating ang eleksyon kung saan ang hotspot. Sabi ko gawin nyo ulit ngayon bago, don't think of the election first. But think kung ano yung mga hotspot na mainit na mga lugar at tignan natin. Ang usual naman talaga na dapat gawin diyan ay hanapin yung illegal firearms. Basta makakaunti yung illegal firearms, kakaunti yung ganyang klaseng krimen. Yan yung mga private army na ganyan, kailangan talagang dismantle lahat yan. Sigasyon, marami silang nakukuhang information. Mabilis naman ang paghuli sa ating mga suspect. Sa ngayon, meron pa rin tayo in hot pursuit. Kasi meron, basta sinara nila yung area. And they are conducting what is referred to as a dragnet. Kung saan talaga dahan-dahan, kung meron pa, ay iniipit sa isang lugar. Again, the killing of Governor Degamo is entirely unacceptable, and it will not stand. It will this cannot be this cannot go unpunished. It was shocking. I couldn't believe that this would still happen. Pinasok ba naman yung sarili niyang bahay? At saka when you see the video, talagang lahat, basta naharap sa kanila, babarilin nila. Ilan ang pinatay nila, walang kinalaman dun sa kanilang gulo ko, nilang away. So yes, this one is particularly terrifying and really, I don't know, this does not belong in our society.
Now, Degamo and 5 others were killed after 6 armed men dressed in military uniform entered the governor's residential compound last Saturday. The president said he is pleased with the progress investigation into the incident, as well as the hot pursuit operations against perpetrators. Now, to maintain peace and security in Negros Oriental following the incident, the president said the police and the army have made their presence in the province more visible. Before Degamo's murder, there were a series of violent incidents incidents against politicians. Datu Montawal, Maguindanao del Sur Mayor Otto Montawal was hurt in an ambush in Pasay on February 22. On February 19, Apari Vice Mayor Romel Alameda and 5 of his companions were killed in an ambush in Nueva Vizcaya. Lanao del Sur Governor Namintal Alonto Adyong Jr. was also hurt, while his 4 cohorts, including 3 police personnel, were slain in an ambush on February 17. In tonight's other news, thousands of Rohingya refugees were left homeless once again after a huge fire broke out in the world's largest refugee camp in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar. Take a look. Now, Cox's Bazar is one of the world's biggest refugee camps. It was ravaged by a massive fire on Sunday. The fire was reported to have broken out in the Balukali camp in the early afternoon. Fire service official Mbadu Hake said there were no immediate casualties. A 7-member team has been constituted to investigate the cause of fire if the fire was an act of sabotage, according to local newspaper Dhaka Tribune. The blaze was brought under control in less than 3 hours. Fires are common in the camps where nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees live in squalid conditions. Most of them fled the military crackdown in Myanmar's Rakhine State in 2017 and took refuge in Bangladesh. A Bangladesh Defense Ministry report last month said that between January 2021 and December 2022, there were 222 fire incidents in the Rohingya camps, including 60 cases of arson. In March 2021, in what was the worst blaze in the Rohingya camps, at least 15 people were killed and some 50,000 were displaced after a fire engulfed an entire block in a settlement. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk deplored the 3rd year of spiraling human rights, humanitarian, economic crisis caused by military rule in Myanmar. He called on the military to end the violence against its people, including discrimination against the Rohingya. Take a look.
The military increased airstrikes against civilian locations by 141% in the 2nd year of the military takeover. Its artillery shelling of communities, including hospitals, schools, and places of worship, increased by over 100%. Despite official claims that such tactics are aimed at anti-military armed groups, in numerous cases, testimony gathered by my office has not indicated the presence of such groups. The military's use of arson throughout the country echoes its past attacks on civilians in Rakhine State. Incidents in which homes and neighborhoods have been set on fire have risen by 380% in the 2nd year after the coup, leading to an estimated 1,200% increase in the number of homes destroyed. People who are unable to flee risk being burned to death. Those who can escape, over 1.3 million displaced since the coup was launched, face destitution. Overall, credible sources have verified that at least 2,947 civilians have been killed by the military and its affiliates since 2021, including 244 children. More than 1/3 of these confirmed deaths occurred in military custody. The actual number of civilian killings is almost certainly far higher. Detainees across the country have reported severe beatings, mock executions, suspension from ceilings without food or water, electrocution, and acts of sexual violence. I condemn this apparently widespread use of torture and ill treatment, as well as consistent reports of squalid conditions of detention. Merely liking a Facebook
10
years or more in prison following opaque trials that do not meet fair trial standards at all. The necessary conditions for voluntary, safe and dignified returns of refugees to Rakhine State simply do not exist, and the over 1 million Rohingya who remain in forced exile in Bangladesh and other countries, as well as hundreds of thousands who are internally displaced, face a bleak present and worse future. The Rohingya community still remaining in Myanmar, which has already endured decades of persecution, continues to face widespread and systematic discrimination in every area of life. And I've witnessed this myself many times. And I call on all UN member states to promote dialogue and sustainable solutions that are representative of the will of the people of Myanmar in order to bring an end to this brutal crisis. The people of Myanmar deserve a much better future.
North Korea's foreign ministry accused the United States of intentionally ramping up tensions by flying in joint military drills with South Korea, according to state news agency KCNA. The allegation comes after Seoul and Washington announced more than 10 days of large-scale military exercises from March 13 to 23. Despite our repeated warnings, the U.S. intentionally continues to aggravate the situation, according to the foreign ministry in a statement. The recent joint air drill clearly shows that the U.S. scheme to use nuclear weapons against the DPRK is being carried forward at the level of an actual war. If the dangerous military provocations of the U.S. and South Korea continue, there's no guarantee that there will be no violent physical conflict in the Korean Peninsula, where huge armed forces of both sides are in acute confrontation. North Korea said any move to shoot down one of its test missiles would also be considered a declaration of war. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of leader Kim Jong-un, warned in a statement that Pyongyang would see it as a declaration of war if the U.S. took military action against the North's strategic weapons tests. In tonight's other news, the oil spill in Oriental Mindoro will likely affect several tourism activities in the province and the Mimaropa region, which will again deprive stakeholders of their livelihood. According formerly the Southern Tagalog region, Mimaropa is composed of Mindoro, Oriental and Occidental, Marinduque, Romblon and Palawan. In a new statement, Tourism Secretary Cristina Garcia Frasco said the Department of Tourism notes with seriousness the grave impact of the oil spill on the tourism industry, including disruptions in the livelihood of the affected communities, tourism-dependent businesses, and recreational activities. She added that scuba diving, beach, and cruise tourism depend on the region's coastal resources and are also its major tourism products. If unmitigated, the oil spill can have adverse impacts on 3 of the world-class dive destinations in the country, specifically the Verde Island Passage and Apo Reef in Mindoro, and Coron's World War II wrecks and the Philippine Dugong. The spill occurred after the oil tanker Mount Princess Empress sank off the municipality of Naujan in Oriental Mindoro on February 28. The tanker was carrying some 800,000 liters of oil. Environmentalists and marine scientists have warned that the sludge could affect close to 36,000 hectares of verdant coral reefs in Oriental Mindoro and Antique. As scores of leatherback turtle hatchlings crawled across a Thai beach last month, 12-year-old Prin Chuan Sangchai was watching closely. The Bangkok secondary school pupil is producing a short documentary about the endangered creatures under a program run by the Environmental and Social Foundation, an NGO working to educate children about conservation. Take a look.
They're special because they are the biggest turtle species, sea turtle, and I like how they can they're great swimmers. I like how they're great swimmers and that they can dive the deepest.
เบี้ยวอยู่นิดนึงขยายตัวนั้นไฟแดงเข้าอยู่ข้างในเรียบร้อยแล้วตัวนี้รอดแน่นอนไฟแดงเราฉีดแอลกอฮอล์ตอนนี้ไม่จับอีกแล้วนะ
After the nest was sunken, it was over 20 hours, which was even more unnatural. So we had to dig it up, and then we found out that the sand is too hard for the turtles to dig it out by themselves. After I found out like leatherback turtles were becoming endangered, critically endangered, I wanted to help them. I wanted to spread awareness to people around me and people on the other side of the world to hear leatherback turtles' story, why they're going extinct.
Okay. ต่อไปมีอะไรพวกนี้เป็นเดมเซลหมดเลยนะครับ เป็นเดมเซลหมดเลย โอเค เอาละดีแล้วดีแล้วต่อไปครับ
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast of ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, reminding you to stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.